Welcome back to Jamyy English. I'm Jayz.
And I'm Amy. This month we have been telling our stories in English: hometown, childhood, family, work, habits, passions, friendships, mistakes, turning points. Today we arrive at the deepest layer.
What you actually believe in.
Your values, the things that guide your decisions even when nobody is watching, the principles you hold even when they are inconvenient.
Talking about values in English is not as common as it should be. Most casual conversation stays on the surface. What you do, where you have been, what you like.
But the conversations that people remember are rarely about those things. They are about what matters to someone and why.
Today we give you the language to have those conversations, to articulate what you believe in, why you believe it, and how it shows up in your actual life.
Let's start with what values are and how they are different from opinions or preferences.
A preference is what you like. Coffee over tea, mountains over beaches. An opinion is what you think about something specific. A value is what you live by.
Values are deeper and more stable than preferences or opinions. They inform your choices across many different areas of life.
Honesty is a value. It affects how you communicate at work, in friendships, in relationships, in how you talk to yourself.
Loyalty is a value. Family is a value. Independence is a value. Fairness, generosity, growth. These are values.
And most people hold several, sometimes in tension with each other.
For example, someone might value both honesty and kindness, and sometimes those two values pull in different directions.
The honest thing to say might hurt someone. The kind thing to say might not be fully true. Navigating that tension is part of living with values.
Today we help you articulate your own values in English and talk about them in a way that is personal, honest, and genuinely interesting.
Let's start with our own. Jayz. What is one value that genuinely guides you? Presence. I believe deeply in being fully where you are, not half there and half somewhere else. When I am with a person, I want to be with them. When I am in the water, I want to be in the water. I find split attention uncomfortable for myself, and I think a form of disrespect to whoever I am.
How does that show up concretely in your life?
I do not use my phone during conversations. Not on the table, face down. Not in my pocket, checking it. Completely away. I am aware that some people find this unusual. I think it is the minimum standard of respect.
That is a value clearly articulated, and you gave us the concrete behavior that expresses it.
Values without concrete behaviors are just words.
Mine is craft. I believe that the quality of how you do something matters, not just the outcome. That doing something well with real attention and care has value independent of whether anyone notices.
Give me an example from your life.
I spend time on design details that most clients will never see: the precise spacing of elements, the consistency of a visual rhythm across a project. Nobody is checking these things, but I know whether they are right or not, and to me it matters whether they are right.
So craft is something you practice even when there is no external accountability.
That is the test of a value for me. Does it hold when nobody is watching?
That is a beautifully precise way to define what a value actually is.
Useful phrases for articulating your own values. Something I genuinely believe in is blank. A principle I try to live by is blank. What matters to me above most other things is blank. I think how you do something is as important as what you do. The thing I find hardest to compromise on is blank.
That last one is particularly honest. Values often become most visible when they are under pressure.
Now, let's talk about how values form. Because people are not born with values. They develop them through experience, through people they admire, through what they have seen go right and wrong.
My value of presence came partly from watching what happens when it is absent. People I respected who were physically present but mentally elsewhere. The hollow feeling of a conversation where the other person was clearly not engaged.
And my value of craft came from my grandmother. She believed that everything worth doing was worth doing properly. She would spend an entire afternoon on a dish that nobody would analyze, but she would know if it was right.
Both of those origins trace back to a person or an observation. Values usually do.
Useful phrases for explaining where a value came from. I think it comes from watching blank. I got it from blank, who showed me what it looked like in practice. I developed it in reaction to something I saw that I did not want to repeat. It formed slowly through a series of experiences that all pointed the same direction.
Now let's talk about values in tension, because holding two genuine values that sometimes conflict is one of the most interesting things to talk about.
I value both quality and efficiency. In design work, these are often in conflict. The best solution takes more time. The faster solution is rarely the best one. I am constantly navigating that tension.
How do you navigate it?
I have learned to know which projects require which emphasis. Client work has deadlines, and the efficiency pressure is real and legitimate. Personal work gets the quality, first approach without compromise. I have accepted that I cannot always give everything the same level of attention, but I can be intentional about which things get which.
That is a sophisticated relationship with two genuine values, not choosing one over the other, but understanding when each takes priority.
And being honest about the choice rather than pretending the tension does not exist.
I hold both independence and connection as values, and these pull against each other constantly. I want deep autonomy over my own time and direction. I also want close relationships and genuine community.
How do you hold both?
With difficulty. Honestly, I think I err toward independence more than is always good for me. I have to consciously invest in connection because it does not always come naturally to someone who values solitude as much as I do.
That self-awareness about where you fall short of your own values is important.
Because having a value and living it perfectly are not the same thing.
Useful phrases for values and tension. Two things I genuinely believe in sometimes pull against each other. I have had to develop a way of knowing when to prod a blank over blank. I do not always get the balance right. The tension is real, and I think it is worth naming. I have accepted that I cannot fully honor both at the same time in every situation.
Now, let's talk about how to discuss values in conversation without sounding preachy or self-righteous.
Because values conversations can go wrong very easily.
If you talk about your values as universal truths that everyone should share, you have moved from articulating a value to lecturing.
The difference is framing. I think honesty is the most important thing. Sounds like a declaration that you want people to agree with.
Honesty is something I hold very closely. It shapes how I communicate with people I care about. Sounds like you sharing something personal.
Same content, completely different effect.
Useful phrases for sharing values without preaching. For me personally, blank is important. I find that blank matters a great deal to how I live. I hold blank quite closely, though I understand others approach it differently. This is just how I think about it. I am curious how you see it. It is something I come back to often, whether or not I always succeed at it.
That last phrase is particularly good. Admitting that you do not always succeed at your own values makes you human rather than self-righteous.
Now let's talk about how values show up in work specifically, because professional values are a common topic in English language professional contexts.
Questions like, what is your working style? Or, what do you value in a workplace? Or, what matters most to you in your career? Are all really asking about professional values.
My professional values, I believe that students learn best when they feel genuinely respected by their teacher, not just liked, respected, trusted with real challenges. I build my classroom around that belief.
Mine. I believe that good design serves the person using it, not the designer's ego. The best solution is the one that works for the specific person in the specific context, not the one that looks impressive in a portfolio.
Both of those are values expressed in professional terms. They shape every decision we make at work.
Useful phrases for professional values. What I believe most strongly about my work is blank. The thing I am not willing to compromise on professionally is blank. I measure my work against blank. What keeps me motivated in my career is blank. I think the purpose of my work is blank.
Now let's practice. Can you describe a situation where you had to make a decision based on a value, even when it was costly?
Yes, I turned down a well-paying client a few years ago because the product they wanted me to design was something I found ethically uncomfortable. It was legal. It was just not something I wanted my work associated with. It was a significant amount of money. I turned it down and worked harder to replace it through other means.
And do you regret it?
Not for a moment. Not because it felt virtuous, but because compromising on something that fundamental would have changed how I feel about my work. And the work is the thing.
That story is a value in action. The decision was costly and she made it anyway. That is what it means to actually hold a value rather than just talk about one.
Let's close with vocabulary for talking about values themselves. Principle, belief, something I hold closely. What I live by, what I come back to, what guides my decisions.
For explaining the origin, it comes from watching. I learned it from, it formed through experience. I developed it in reaction to, I could not always have articulated it, but
For values and tension, they pull against each other. I have to know when to prioritize. The tension is real. I do not always get the balance right.
for sharing without preaching. For me personally, I hold this closely, though others see it differently. This is just how I think about it, whether or not I always succeed at it.
And for values and action, it was costly, but I made the decision anyway. I measure my choices against this. It shapes how I approach everything.
What you believe is the deepest part of your story. Talking about it honestly in English is the final layer of everything we have built this month.
Know your values. Find the words for them. Share them without preaching.
That is the practice.
Thank you for a wonderful month of storytelling.
We will be back tomorrow with a new direction.
Take good care.
Let's also talk about how values evolve, because the values you hold at 22 are not always the same ones you hold at 35.
Values can deepen, they can shift. Sometimes one that felt central recedes and another comes forward.
When I was younger, I valued ambition quite highly. Getting better, moving forward, achieving things, and I still value growth. But the shape of what I want to achieve has changed enormously.
What changed?
I started caring much less about recognition and much more about impact. Whether my students actually improve matters to me deeply. Whether that improvement is visible to anyone outside my classroom matters very little.
So the value shifted from ambition to impact.
From external to internal measurement, which I think is a common shift in the later 20s and 30s.
For me, the value of independence was enormous when I was young. It was almost a reaction. I wanted to prove I could do things alone. Now independence is still important, but I hold it differently.
The value matured rather than disappeared.
Useful phrases for talking about how values evolve. I used to value blank more than I do now. The shape of what matters to me has changed over the years. What I care about has shifted from blank toward blank. I still hold this value, but I understand it differently than I used to.
That last one is worth pausing on. What I actually believed versus what I thought I was supposed to believe.
Many people's early values are inherited from family, from culture, from the environment they grew up in, and part of adult development is figuring out which of those inherited values you genuinely endorse, and which ones you have been carrying without examining.
That is a sophisticated and honest thing to say about values.
And it is also a form of respect for the inheritance. You are not rejecting where you came from. You are understanding it clearly and choosing intentionally.
Now, let's talk about the values that are universal versus the ones that are culturally specific.
Some values appear across almost every culture. Kindness, fairness, care for children and elders, honesty within, trusted relationships.
But how those values are expressed and prioritized varies enormously.
The value of honesty, for example, in some cultural contexts. Direct verbal honesty is the highest form of respect. In others, honesty is expressed more indirectly, through action rather than statement, to protect the dignity of everyone involved.
Both cultures value honesty, but what honesty looks like in practice is very different.
Understanding this is genuinely useful in cross-cultural conversation. When someone from a different background does something that seems dishonest to you, it may be that they are expressing a shared value through a different form.
And being able to say that without judgment is a sign of real cultural intelligence.
Useful phrases for talking about cultural differences and values. I think we are both trying to be blank, but we express it differently. In my background, This is how blank is understood. I have come to understand that blank can look quite different across cultures. What I was taught about blank is not the only way to hold it.
Now, let's talk about how to invite someone else to share their values.
Because a values conversation is only truly interesting when both people are in it.
Good questions for inviting someone to share their values. What is something you genuinely believe in? What matters most to you when you are making a difficult decision? Is there something you find you are not willing to compromise on? What would you say actually guides you day to day?
Those questions are specific enough to get a real answer, but open enough to go anywhere.
And they signal that you are interested in the person below the surface level,
which most people are hungry for, even if they do not always expect it.
Now let's look at one final idea: the values you aspire to versus the values you actually live by.
There is almost always a gap between them.
I aspire to patience. I believe patience is a genuine virtue. I am, by my own honest assessment, not a naturally patient person. I work at it. I make progress. I fall short regularly.
I aspire to generosity, with time, with attention, with credit. I believe in it deeply, and I am aware that I can become protective of my time in ways that are not always generous.
Both of those are honest self-portraits.
The gap between the value you hold and the person you currently are is not a failure. It is the territory where growth happens.
Useful phrases for aspired values. This is something I am working toward rather than something I have fully arrived at. I believe in blank deeply even when I fall short of it. I think about this value often precisely because I know I do not always live it. It is an aspiration and I take it seriously even when I miss it.
Those phrases are honest and they invite understanding rather than judgment.
Because everyone has a gap between who they are and who they are trying to be.
And the awareness of that gap is itself a form of integrity.
Your values are the most personal thing you can share in conversation. Handle them with care. Share them with honesty. Receive others' values with curiosity.
That is how the deepest conversations happen.
Thank you for being with us all month.
Jamyy English is here every day.
We will see you tomorrow.